Hello, I'm going through all of the lunations that will happen in the year 2026. I'm starting here with the new moon that actually happens in December of 2025. And this is because I believe starting with the mutable axis, which is the Sagittarius new moon, which is pictured right here, allows us to transition more fluidly and move through 2026 with greater adaptability to change. So that's where we'll begin. Each will be very brief. So here we go. This Sagittarius new moon on December 19th, you can see this is in Pacific Standard Time, is making a very strong square to Saturn and Neptune. So this is a point where we really have to get over ourselves, get over our beliefs, let go of what we think we believe in. And this is going to be strongly attached to some type of relationship that is ending. And I see that because Venus and Mars are coming into a balsamic conjunction with each other, enclosing this new moon. So this is a point where we're just letting go of what we believe, getting over ourselves to really start that new year out. Okay, so the first full moon that really happens in the year of 2026 is, of course, the Cancer full moon that happens on January 3rd. So here we have the chart. Basically, when we get over ourselves at that Sagittarius new moon, we allow ourselves to grow into ourselves emotionally. And that's what a Cancer full moon is. This is a full moon that is pretty conjunct Jupiter, still not exactly, but there's just a lot of peak moments of emotional wisdom that are going to be made very visible at this time, early January 2026, starting off the year on a pretty full note, I would say. And, Venus and Mars are still making a conjunction to the sun in their balsamic phase. And they're both also very opposite the full moon. And so I would say that whatever relationship was pushing us to get over ourselves at the new moon is still very much so putting pressure on us in either a good or a bad way. But there is a way in which we are unifying our inner selves to ultimately be able to grow our emotional body thanks to the work that we're doing in Capricorn. Now, I don't see, let's look. At this point, there isn't so much change yet at this full moon in Cancer, but we are right on the cusp of it by this next lunation. So the Cancer full moon that happens earlier in the month of January, that first month of 2026, we have an emotional high that ultimately brings us into a Capricorn new moon. Okay, once we have that emotional high, then we reset the structures of our lives. Okay, and January 18th, still not the huge seismic shifts happening, although we are getting closer and closer to it. By this new moon, Venus and Mars will be in their new phase to each other. However, there is still one more, bridge that this little stellium up here needs to go through, I would say, because they're all going to make a pass to Pluto by the end of January and before the next full moon, which happens. So this, end period of January is very interesting. We have this Capricorn new moon ruled by Saturn, which is actually at this time stronger in a sextile to Uranus, which is very nice for stabilizing change, stabilizing the intelligence of our resources that are ultimately going to allow us to, really just be in coherence with the change that Neptune and Saturn are about to make as time moves forward pretty quickly. And so if we look at the full moon that happens here, February 1st, full moon in Leo, which itself is still, interestingly, opposite Venus and Mars. But all of these planets here have now passed their conjunction to Pluto, which is in the opposite sign of the new moon. I'm sorry, opposite sign is the full moon here. This is the Leo Aquarius axis being really lit up. And this full moon, ruled by the sun itself in Aquarius. The sun in Aquarius ruled by Uranus in Taurus, ruled by Venus also in Aquarius, ruled by Uranus in Taurus. This is a much more creatively intelligent full moon with these, strong oppositions. This is just like a creative expression of whatever new relationship to your mind, because ultimately the newness of this relationship becomes really sparky and exciting when we realize it is in our communities, it's in our minds, and we get to shine our creative intelligence with that Leo full moon in February. And it is also by this Leo full moon that Neptune has finally stepped into the sign of Aries. That's the first lunation that we get squarely, where Neptune is in Aries, and that's kind of the first, kick that we get of change over this year. So Leo full moon, we know, it's interesting. These are both these fire signs, Neptune and Aries, Leo full moon. This is going to be a blip in time, but still, we are feeling creative fire juices really, really moving here. Yeah, I think it's wonderful. I like this. All right, and then that Leo full moon winds down by the end of February, February 17th, or I guess mid-February, winds down to the Aquarius new moon. And this is where things really kick off. So basically between Leo full moon and Aquarius new moon, that 2 weeks is when Saturn also steps into Aries, but they are still in a balsamic conjunction to each other, Saturn and Neptune. Okay, and so at this new moon in Aquarius is interesting because it is within this new moon cycle, the cycle that starts February 17th, that we have the Saturn-Neptune conjunction happen. So this is really going to be February 17th, the lunation cycle that really portends the beginning and the end and the beginning, if you will. This Aquarius new moon ruled by a Uranus, which has recently gone direct since the Leo full moon. And so that's another signal that things are moving forward in a sense of linear time, which we know is not the truth. But in terms of how our material intelligence is moving us forward, and we are at this point really heading back into our brains. And this new moon is also square that. But I like that square because to me it says we have to push through change. We have to let go of the way we've been using our mind. Again, this Aquarius is all about how we use our minds. It's the whole kit and caboodle of it, okay? Other really nice thing happening at this new moon in Aquarius is that Venus is going to be exactly on the north node. And, Venus technically ruling this, well, technically it would be Mars in Aquarius. Like there's a whole way that this rulership works out, that it ends up being Uranus and Taurus and any of these planets in Aquarius, because we have this Venus on the north node in Pisces ruling Uranus, because Uranus is in Venus's sign Taurus. But then Venus itself is ruled by Neptune in Aries, which is ruled by Mars in Aquarius. Okay, so don't worry about those rulerships, but my point here is our minds at 28 degrees still, we are moving beyond. And again, as I said, this February new moon, mid-February, February 17th new moon, this is huge. This is huge. And this is also, I believe, we'll see in the next week, 2 weeks, Mercury will go retrograde as well. And so there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on here, okay? February 20th is the day that Neptune Saturn begins their new phase conjunction. And so this, and then the other thing about this, everybody, is basically that this is kind of considered an eclipse. And it didn't come to my mind as the first thing to say because it's out of sign, but it's still within 10 degrees. And but it is kind of an eclipse along that Aquarius Pisces edge, okay, which is that edge of where our own intelligence meets the sea of all other intelligences in the world. The truth that everything is within us and everything is just projecting out of our own minds. And so the vigilance that we are, vigilance feels like a very Aries word, but it's not to be militaristic about it. It's just to say, wow, I am that I am, and here we go, right? So let's look at what happens at this full moon. Full moon of March, early March. Eclipse. This is certainly an eclipse. This is a full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo, which is very interesting, on the south node with the sun and Mercury retrograde on the north node. So before I even look at that, we're going to see here that Venus, Venus is very close, but Neptune, Saturn are now in their new phase conjunction, which means we have just started a huge new massive thing in our lives throughout the time that this full moon has grown from the new moon in Aquarius to the full moon in Virgo. So by really starting our new minds fresh in Aquarius, new perspective, new community, okay, we grow into a new emotional pattern, basically. How do we relate to the past with that South Node in Virgo? How are we relating to the past? Because we just decided at that new moon in Aquarius that we're gonna start to do things differently, right? And so this is going to be that full moon lunar eclipse that basically shows us this is a new phase to the South Node also, which is very nice because we are in a new phase to the past, okay? The Mercury ruler retrograde in Pisces in its opposite sign, making an opposition here. It's just that like we are really creatively thinking right now. Mercury retrograde in Pisces, this is really creative time to be interfacing with where we are right now, but also like what's the difference between who we are in the past and what we are choosing to habituate on a day-to-day basis now. Okay, Saturn, Neptune's new world, now being ruled by this Mars at 0 degrees Pisces as well. Very close to the North Node. There's some creative, very creative action. It's a good time to go swimming, okay? But this Virgo full moon lunar eclipse, very powerful that the new moon in Aquarius that happened at the beginning of this, or sorry, at mid-February, how many things did it do? It not only brought on an eclipse, true, like very, very, very aligned eclipse. This is like 3 degrees away. That's more, maybe 4 or 5 degrees away from the nodes. Very, very tight eclipse. But it also started this whole new world that we are in. Okay, also brought on a Mercury retrograde. This mid-February to mid-March, I tell you, is really, really, really huge. Okay, so this is like going from the end of Q1 into Q2, okay, of 2026. So the first quarter, the first 3 months, basically, of 2026. It's really so much change. So much change. Okay. All right. And so that Virgo full moon lunar eclipse once again winds down into a Pisces new moon. Very interesting. Not a lot of harsh aspects happening here. Yeah, this is like a calm somewhat of a calm new beginning to this new world that we literally just stepped into. Pluto is in a place it has never been before. It is so far into Aquarius. We've never been at 4 degrees 58 before. So that's totally new. You know, this is a late degree new moon in Pisces, which means like, I think we've tried to start this new world before, but I don't think it's worked in the past. This is really nice sextile to Uranus, means that like, again, change in our favor. This is about the material reality that we live in Taurus, and the intelligence of material reality that we live in. Jupiter goes direct within those 2 weeks as well, which is lovely. Basically, by this point in March, we're basically heading towards the summer because we just have a few more months until the node switch signs, till Jupiter goes into Leo. This is basically the last, you know, March, April, May. This is the second quarter of 2026 that starts. And this is just, you know, we just started this new big change, and we're just in that second quarter of big change, which I think is basically getting used to this new world of Saturn, Neptune being built in Aries. So who you are, what your dreams are building, and just kind of aligning that spiritually, of course, right? So again, let's see. Venus in Aries by this point, Mars still in Pisces, you know, Mercury retrograde on the North Node, which is powerful, interesting. We really know where we're going mentally, and it's brand new. It's pretty brand new. We might have touched it once in the summer of 2025, but we really are feeling like full steam ahead, since Jupiter is direct, Uranus is direct. All of these things are direct by March, January. So really that second quarter of 2026 just really begins our understanding of what the long term of this new reality that it is we are building for ourselves, this new dream. So let me see. Yeah, it's like nothing too crazy happening yet. Jupiter Venus square, which I, you know, think it's lovely. So, all right, what does this turn into? Full moon, April 1st. Let's look at it. Full moon in Libra, okay? Let's see. By this point, Mercury is direct. Everything is direct. Pluto is at 5 degrees. This is just, we are so chugging along into the new. Venus in her home sign of Taurus, very nice. So by April, right? And this is the astrological new year, around the astrological new year. Full moon in Libra. Okay. Full moon in Libra is about other people. So like up until this point in April, it's kind of been about how are we doing in every single moment. It's very self-focused, continues to be self-focused because of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries, which is about ourselves. But again, we see Saturn, really nice sextile to Pluto at this time. So we are really building on our own intelligence, on our own mind, and structuring this place of our mind that was otherwise destroying us, basically. Okay, Venus-Pluto square, yes, not necessarily the most intuitively easy to get through, but very powerful to really say very loudly to the world and very bravely what it is that you want materially. And that Venus rules the full moon. Venus and Taurus. So very, very strong, very nice full moon, very solid Venus rulership happening here. Really, really nice, powerful, lovely. I love this. What a powerful April 1st. Is that April Fool's Day? I don't even know. Powerful April 1st, right? Powerful. This is so cool. I really, really love this. Nodes still are at 8 degrees of Pisces. They really are not moving very quickly right now. But again, Mercury is direct where we've already started taking action. Mars has now, really deep into Pisces. We learned how to swim. We know how to breathe underwater. And we're just going, It's very cool. Very cool. April. Like April is like the where things really are going to start to feel like we have a personal grip on things. Also, because of the moon in Libra, we are seeing things a little bit clearly. Now, granted, this Venus-Pluto square means that there's like some tension, some hump we're getting over when it comes to our relational power. However, it doesn't mean anything bad. It just means this is like very passionate. There's something we know we're going for. I mean, that's this conjunction in Aries. Like we know what our battle is by this point in 2026, and even before we know what our battle is. So let's keep going. Okay, this is a new moon in Aries, conjunct Chiron, which is kind of serious, but it is not making any other powerful aspects except to Chiron. This is a new phase to Chiron, which means we are starting out a new phase to some way in our lives where we have found some type of teaching mastery, like some capacity to heal ourselves and heal other people through being ourselves and being honest about our pain and letting it heal, knowing that we can heal ourselves. That's this Chiron in Aries and the new moon on Chiron in Aries, okay? Mars at this new moon in Aries, so Mars being the ruler of Aries, is in Aries, is in its home sign. It is almost in a conjunction to Saturn. It has already made a conjunction to Mercury and Neptune. This is a very empowered Mars, okay? Think about this space between Neptune and Saturn now is only growing in a way that late 2025, that gap felt like it was like an endless abyss. Now, the space between this Neptune and Saturn, 2 degrees to 7 degrees, feels like exploration. Like you need to go out and explore what you're ready to commit to when it comes to your dreams. We have Mercury there. Our mind is right there. We have Mars there. Our actions and our minds, everything is coherent to who we know ourselves to be in Aries. Okay? And that coherence, also not making any crazy aspects, really nice. That coherence is the ruler of this new moon. So I see this as a huge, huge, huge healing moment, okay? That's really, really amazing. Venus in her own home sign still, okay? Pluto, I think by this point, Pluto's slowing down a little bit, but still very deep, very far into Aquarius. We haven't been there before. So much new going on with this Pluto, so much new going on in our brains. And Mars sextile Pluto, really powerful. Saturn still sextile Mars. Okay, all of these sextile Pluto. Whatever this very solid action that we are taking to really like stand on the hill that we know we are here to like act and be ourselves. It's like in harmony with that deeper desire to transform our mind in with Pluto and Aquarius. This is an incredible new moon for healing places in ourselves that have been chronically in pain, and really just like really trusting our own impulse, because it might feel like it is a little bit dampened with Saturn there, but dampened not in a way that's like you can't do this, but in a way that says you are responsible for your own actions. You are responsible for your own actions. Okay? Very cool new moon. I really like this new moon a lot. Really, really do. Interesting. This is the first moment Neptune is beginning to square the lunar nodes. This is still out by like 10 degrees, but it's going to be something big I talk about, at this point next year. Neptune squaring the nodes is like this intelligence really wants to be given to Pisces. Okay, our own uniqueness, our own material intelligence, the way that we know that materiality and our resources are not inert, they are alive. We want to resolve our understanding of that truth through this North Node, through the truth that only keeps expanding. Okay? Maybe in the past we've tried to resolve material intelligence through devoting ourselves to it, to money, to like really, really running ourselves dry, to like get all we can out of the intelligence of the earth. But we really need to just give it to Pisces, okay? We'll talk about that more later, but what a powerful new moon cycle this is, okay? Power. I mean, again, late degree new moon. So we've attempted to start this again in the past, but new phase to Chiron, really nice. We are starting a new relationship to our own healing potential. The fact that we heal ourselves, amazing. Let's look at what this becomes. Full moon in Scorpio in May 1st. Okay, let's look what's going on here. Pluto definitely slowing down by this point, not retrograde yet, but we have gone out really far in Pluto territory by this point. Uranus, the ruler, is now back in Gemini by this full moon. So that Aries beginning really allows us to just move forward into the future again and again and again, okay? Even though this Pluto is definitely slowing down by this point, we have forged so far. Our minds are now ready to catch up again because this trine between Pluto, Uranus is getting stronger and stronger again. Interesting. Let's see. Full moon Scorpio while Sun is in Taurus. Okay, that Pluto rules the full moon. Pluto rules Scorpio. Powerful still. This is like seeing where we might be still giving our power away a little bit, but at the same time, I think we're just going to be seeing our own, this is widely trine Jupiter and Cancer direct, right? Venus, the ruler of the sun, Gemini, making a square to the lunar nodes. Very interesting. Also still resolving. Gemini resolves through. North Node in Pisces, we're going to be feeling like we're open to many, many options, and we need to remain open. We need to choose the thing that allows us to stay completely open and choosing expansion and creativity in the Pisces realms. Uranus moving closer to a square to the nodes as well. This is an very interesting full moon. It feels very different than the new moon in Aries that kind of became it, but at the same time, we have Mercury with Chiron at that same degree that the new moon was at. And so there's something, again, that we are speaking to our own, like the process by which we heal ourselves. Yeah. And this, yeah, this Taurus season, everything is new. Everything is still new. New phase, Saturn, Neptune, both are still direct. Uranus, direct in its new sign, Gemini. Okay, this is really that first full moon where we are seeing how far into the future we have, how our new self has forged. And it's not even about needing to get anywhere at this point. It's about seeing the inevitability of an expansive potential that only keeps going. The square to the nodes from Uranus here, we're not going to have anything go into Sag and square this Pisces Virgo axis again. And so there's no more going back now. We're only going towards the future, okay? Of course, the moon will, but that's kind of like a fleeting moment, unless you have planets in Sag up there. Okay, so the Scorpio full moon we had at the beginning of May turns into a Taurus new moon. So that Scorpio full moon winds itself all the way down. Interesting, within that waning lunar cycle, Pluto does go retrograde. This is important. Pluto has gone so far out, we have never been at that 5 degrees 30 minutes before. And so now we're getting a second pass at this 5 degrees. And it's not making really any crazy exact, it's relatively sextile to Neptune, only going to get closer in that sextile to Neptune. But that's a whole wider thing going on. New moon in Taurus means like we're materially starting up again. Venus in Gemini. There's something still about what we are open to when it comes to data. Like, how does the data that we attract and what we want mentally allow us to grow material reality in the way that we see it, need it, want it, right? Mercury is right there. So again, there's something powerful here with the mind, with how our mind allows us to understand materiality and allows us a direct link to materiality as well. Interesting, nothing crazy aspect-wise at this new moon. Jupiter is still direct. Uranus is definitely tighter in a square to the nodes. This new moon itself is somewhat square to the nodes, also resolving through the North Node in Pisces. And so if we feel like there's a choice wanting to be made at this time when it comes to what to do with our resources or like what to do with our material reality that's already in abundance, we gotta go give it out to Pisces again, okay? Yeah. Mars is right at the end of Aries conjunct Chiron. Interesting that the last 3 lunations are Chiron conjunctions. If I'm not wrong, the second quarter of this year is very interestingly connected to Chiron in Aries, in that we are kind of moving out of that Aries season, or we are in the Aries season. So that Chiron's getting activated pretty directly throughout this whole time, which I read as healing, okay? Healing. This is again, we're nearing the, middle end of this second quarter of the year, okay? So let me see what else. Honestly, that is it for this new moon. It's not, this is a fixed new moon, so we are still desiring to grow. We have been in a season of like stability. This Mars with Chiron, which again is still ruling both Neptune and Saturn, to me, speaks to the fact that we are acting on our healing of ourselves again and again and again. Yeah. But that's really the last conjunction that we'll get this year to Aries. That's, nothing's going to come that far again. Maybe the moon, maybe Mercury, we'll see, right? But okay, this new moon in Taurus becomes, at the very end of May, a full moon in Sagittarius. Okay? Also square the nodes. Interesting, I mentioned this about this squaring the nodes. At this point, the moon in Sagittarius does resolve through Virgo, South Node in Virgo. And we are halfway between eclipse seasons. So whatever happened in that first quarter, the eclipsey first quarter that we had of this year, we're now getting a choice point in our beliefs. Remember the Sagittarius new moon we had at the end of 2025 that wanted us to change our beliefs dramatically. This says, maybe we need a refresh on that. We need to press reset and do that again. That's that moon in Sagittarius resolving through South Node in Virgo. Go back to your habits. Are they serving you or are they not? The sun, which is the creative way that you're speaking in the world, is resolving through North Node. Again, go towards, let yourself creatively act in whatever way you want and say what you want. Liberate your mind. That's a close conjunction to Uranus. Uranus also very, very closely square the nodes at this point. This is going to be some larger collective decision we're really coming to at the end of May, right before the summer starts. There's going to be this choice point, this moment of collective, I won't say confusion, but needing to make a choice. Are we going to take our intelligence and try to put it in the past again? No, we have to go towards the future. Ruled by Jupiter in Cancer still, Venus present there. This is an emotional truth, okay? Emotional truth that is being made very, very clear to us at this point. Also, guys, Chiron at the 29th degree of Aries. Chiron will move into Taurus this year, which is crazy to think about because we are, in 2025, we're so used to Chiron being in Aries. That's gonna change in the next few months. We'll see. Okay, so Pluto still retrograde. Saturn has gone so far into Aries by now, so deep into Aries. Okay. Anything else I want to say here? Not really. Okay. So end of May, we have big full moon. May really does end with a full moon. And it's interesting because that's by the time June begins, this idea of summer for me always starts in June. I don't know about you, but the astrology never always matches. But this time, we will have a new moon earlier in June, or at least midway through June. Let's see. All right, and then welcome to the the third quarter, which is the second half of 2025. We have the new moon in Gemini that happens on June 14th. So it's not exactly early June, but it's mid-June. And that new moon in Gemini, 24 degrees of Gemini, also not making any really crazy aspects. This is interesting, okay? New moon in Gemini is all about just restarting our mind, restarting our curiosity, okay? This is the summertime in most of the world, not everywhere, but it's interesting. We have Jupiter all the way out there, 26, making a balsamic conjunction, or Mercury, which is the ruler of the new moon, making a balsamic conjunction to Jupiter. This is a lot of coherence in our minds at this new moon. This is a lot of coherence in our minds. There's something very strong about Cancer reality, which is our family, our emotional body that we understand. We have gone through an entire Mercury-Jupiter cycle of understanding here. And it's very cool and very powerful. I believe Mercury will retrograde at some point in this lunar cycle, which is interesting to consider Mercury going retrograde around Jupiter. Mercury being the left brain, logical, Jupiter being that right brain. So when they come together, there's a lot of coherence. And again, the sign of Cancer, this is a lot of emotional coherence, okay? But because of the retrograde that will happen, I think whatever this emotional coherence is, that's what we're working out. That's what we're working with at this time, yeah? So big emotional month, you know, Gemini itself, mutable sign. This is, again, the beginning of that second half of 2026. Imminently, Jupiter will move into Leo. That's going to be a big change. Imminently, the nodes will switch out of Leo. Sorry, will switch out of Virgo, Pisces, and move into Leo, Aquarius. This month, this lunar cycle, is a big, big shift. We'll see exactly when it happens, but this is really that second half of the year when things begin to change again. And I think it's just reflecting the fact that we are starting, not only starting this new, building out this new dream, building out this new reality, right? Now, Mars and Taurus, we're building out that reality in the material world, okay? But we are bringing our minds in coherence with all of these other places and patterns as well. So very, 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 very cool, very interesting beginning, or rather mid-June, that second half of 2026. Unites our heart, unites our mind. And that's really the rulership, is just this Mercury, which is ruled by the moon itself in Gemini, okay? Nodes are about to switch. We're going to be feeling this. We're going to be feeling ready to start a new journey in the second half of 2026. And we will be. Venus moving to oppose Pluto pretty soon. Powerful moment of being in a relationship where we see our passions and our desires as equal to our minds. Like there's a deep desire in our minds that we are working with Pluto and Aquarius. And we see how our heart, Venus in Leo, how our heart is equal to that, equal to our mind. That's the most important part of an opposition. Okay, so let's see. Middle of June turns into a full moon in Capricorn. By the very end of June, we have a full moon in Capricorn. It is Cancer season. This full moon, a little bit more testy than the others have been, simply because it is making a square to that Saturn-Neptune. This is different, right? This is a different Saturn-Neptune that we're used to. Well, by this one, we're probably used to it, but this is like clarity in the structural world, visibility, structural visibility to how, this is a last quarter square, which means what we are building in this Aries sense cannot be reflected in this full moon. So it's kind of like we're going to see the structures that we've already figured out how to build. And at this full moon, there's going to be some big part of us that realizes we are not aiming towards recreating this full moon again and again and again, even though it does reflect an honest reality structure. Okay? Jupiter, that very end of Cancer, Mercury retrograde, still balsamic to Jupiter. Okay? Very interesting. Our minds, we are really chewing on something here emotionally. That Saturn is the ruler of this full moon, the end of June. So again, this is already, we're into the second half of this year. From my perspective. And look at that, Chiron's in Taurus. our pain point in our own selves that we have been healing and healing and healing so constantly since 2018. We finally get a break from that. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Wow. We're so close to these nodes also switching as well. This is really right at the end. I see this full moon at the end of June as like, this is nearing the end again. Okay. And this is going to feel like we've really exhausted something. We're really done with something. That 29 degrees Jupiter final degree of the nodes. Uranus and Mars both squaring the nodes. Mars-Uranus conjunction saying that we need to take action on the very edge of our intelligence right now, on the edge of the data that we have. We need to take action. And if we feel like there's a pattern that we haven't been able to overcome, again, we need to sift this through the Pisces North Node still. The end of this Pisces journey still wants us to move our brains into the future, like move our brains into limitless possibility, into miracles, into understanding our intelligence is not limited by our minds. Our intelligence expands data, expands our minds. Yeah. Don't try to understand in a Virgo reality what your mind is. Okay. Mercury retrograde still, again, this is just like big reconsideration. This whole time we're right at the end of June now, and we've had this whole first half of this 2026, and we're realizing, amazing, we've come so far, and yet here are the ways that we have to still let go of structural reality. It's going to keep working. We are not interested in it working that way anymore. That's that last quarter square that'll be anything in Capricorn will be making this last quarter square to Neptune, Saturn in Aries. So this is the reinvention of self, the reinvention of how we build off of our own personal truth. Okay? Very powerful, very important. Anything else at this one that I want to talk about? I don't think so. All right. All right. So by July 14th, after the Capricorn full moon, we get a Cancer new moon. And this, again, this whole section is really the midpoint of the year. We are in the third quarter of the year by this point, from my perspective, and you'll see why. But this is really that halfway point. So we are moving into this new moon in Cancer, which says we are restarting our relationship to our home, to our emotional body, to our family. Mercury retrograde is there. So this is a larger configuration, a larger thought process that we are seeing from a different perspective over this time. Okay, no crazy aspects. Look at that. Okay, Jupiter in Leo, brand new feeling. You know, Jupiter's out of Cancer now. It's not going back. Jupiter's also very close to being opposite to Pluto. This is big. This is really big. Everything that we've learned with Jupiter in Cancer, it's time to show it now. It's time to show it. And it's time to equate it to the obsession of our minds. This is a huge, huge creative output that we are being asked to share and allow to shine onto our minds. Okay? Crazy. Very interesting. And I think it's because we have established a lot of emotional safety since Jupiter has been in Cancer for the whole year before. Now, powerful, because we're having this powerful, 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 look at this, 4 degrees Neptune, 4 degrees Pluto, 4 degrees Uranus, 3 degrees Jupiter, sextile, 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 trine, trine. So we've talked about Pluto, Uranus trine already a lot in 2025. Neptune, Jupiter trine. Huh? Neptune, Jupiter trine. Soon to be Jupiter Saturn trine, but right now, Neptune Jupiter trine. Okay. Wow. Talk about building out a dream. Talk about the wisdom, the creative wisdom of your personal truth. Okay. That's what's starting at this new moon in Cancer. Venus on the South Node in Virgo at the very, 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 very last breaths here of the nodal axis of Virgo Pisces. So those are going to shift imminently. Neptune's gone retrograde also, didn't mention. So we're looking inwardly for truth now, at the same time as we are moving inwardly for our soul. So even by this mid-July, we're restarting emotionally. This is a much more internal, internal time of the year to really let your, like, all the work you've done with your feelings, let all of that support this big moment. This is a big moment, the Jupiter-Pluto opposition that will perfect in this lunar cycle. Okay, big moment here. This is like, again, your creative wisdom is coming head to head with your brain and your, the intelligence of your soul. Okay, it's a great time to be making art, sharing creative wisdom with the world. Okay, big, wow, 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 wow. Okay, very, very wow, very big. Lots of retrogrades, so it's not necessarily about pushing out into the world and being super visible, but it's about really just trusting your own heart, trusting your own expansion of your heart at this time. Venus on the South Node is like, what the resources that we are committing ourselves to are present. Okay. Very interesting. Let's see what this becomes. At the end of July, full moon in Leo. Okay, exactly. This is probably why I was hampering on about this. All right. Full moon conjunct Pluto. Well, the sun is conjunct Jupiter. Creative, so creative up here with the sun and Jupiter. So creative, so much emotional, so much creative wisdom, so much expressive heart wisdom. Okay. That is shining a light on our minds, on the power of our minds. If ever there were like a creative work about like mental dynamics, that would be what's happening here. Pluto, Uranus trine also getting closer and closer, grand sextile also getting closer and closer. Amazing. What an amazingly powerful, this is going to be amazingly powerful if you trust your own creative strength and trust your own creative wisdom. Do not trust your emotions. Okay? Mercury's direct. It's in a first quarter square to Saturn Neptune, which says, gotta say something brave. Put yourself out there. Say it. Nodes have also shifted. Okay? Crazy time. No, it's not crazy. What it is that this South Node is going to get closer and closer to Jupiter and the Sun. There's something inherently with that South Node. There's something inherent that each of us have access to in our creative lives. Leo. Okay? And at this next year, next 2 years, next 18 months, North Node's going to come close to Pluto. Whenever the North Node and Pluto are in the same sign and are getting conjunct to each other, that is the only thing that really matters. And so for this whole next period, when Pluto and the North Node are going to be in the same sign of Aquarius, all of our main focus is going to be in Aquarius. We're going to have Jupiter in Leo, the opposite sign, which is going to help us creatively integrate all the changes that are happening in our minds. Okay, it's huge, 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 amazing, very powerful, very interesting. Okay, wow, big wow. Mars-Venus square, first quarter square to Mars-Venus also. So whatever relationship started in January, whatever relationship dynamic, rather, I should say, started in January. A good checking point by the end of July, midsummer. See what brave new thing we need to be open to. Okay, nodes are out of Virgo. Amazing, amazing, interesting, different, powerful from where I'm sitting in December of 2025. I have no idea what this is going to feel like. Chiron and Taurus, very different, okay? Very different, powerful. This is like, goes back to a similar thing to Uranus when it was in Taurus. Chiron is like, it can be painful, yes, but it's where you are meant to heal yourself and heal your relationship to your resources, your sensory reality with Taurus. Okay. End of July, the Aquarius full moon becomes a Leo new moon. And that's not many harsh aspects at all. That Leo, the Aquarius full moon we just talked about is going to be very intense. So July and over this summer is a big wow moment, okay? But by this point, middle of August, this new moon in Leo, interesting because, Pluto will have been at this 3-degree mark several times. So we're going to be feeling a little bit more comfortable with Pluto stuff, especially because we've just had such a big activation around it. Nodes are moving very slowly, haven't moved beyond this 29 degrees. But this new moon in Leo rules itself. And so we are restarting a relationship to some creative knowing that we have, because that south node is there. This is a balsamic to the south node. There's some deep creative presence that we already have, and we just need to restart our relationship to this engine as I see it. Okay. Interesting, we have this Mercury Jupiter balsamic phase again. So we go from a few months ago when that balsamic phase was in Cancer. We were completing something around our understanding of our emotional body. And now we are completing something, there's coherence, there's creative coherence. Look at that, sextile to Venus, trine to Neptune. This is amazing, creative. And then balance, the creative, this creativity, this is like powerful for fine art. Venus in her home sign of Libra, she is opposing Neptune, very dreamy. Other thing, everybody, super duper, 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 duper powerful mid-August is when Venus again is completing the grand trine in the air signs. Whenever we have something enter Venus, we complete this grand trine. Pluto in Aquarius, Uranus in Taurus, Uranus in Gemini, Venus in Libra. Super amazing, beautiful, powerful for mental opportunity, like opportunity in relationships, opportunity in your mind, opportunity, a lot of opportunity in your mind and about how you relate to other people creatively because of all this Leo emphasis. And this balsamic conjunction is very intelligent, incredibly got something to say, got something you're closing out at this new moon. Mars is in Cancer. That's a whole new ball game. Saturn and Neptune are retrograde now. I might have missed that in the last ones, but they're both moving backward now. Okay. Chiron also retrograde. So interesting, by August, mid-August, we're going to be a little bit back, in terms of our consciousness, rethinking some things we've thought about even into 2025. But we're going to be like on a whole new track now because of that North Node, South Node shift, because of Jupiter's shift. Focus is solely on not only the change of our minds in this huge Aquarian Plutonic sense, but in order to do that, we need to be focused on our creative output in the world. Okay? Think about the creativity as the means by which you change and you understand the intelligence of your brain and your mind and your connection to humanity more and more, okay? Nothing left in Pisces here, okay? Nothing left in Pisces. Let's see what the full moon becomes. Pisces full moon, eclipse. Even though out of sign, Pisces eclipse, very tight eclipse, okay? Funny that I just said nothing's in Pisces and then we get a Pisces full moon, right? End of August. Pisces full moon square Uranus, okay? Trine Mars, that's nice. I see this as like a, Mercury ruling that sun. This is just a very creative, like, culmination of all of the work that we've done in the Pisces North Node, Virgo South Node axis time, with like the pressure being off of that axis, but really being able to see that Pisces stuff a little bit more neutrally, a little bit more clearly now, because the nodes aren't there anymore. Big creative visibility, because there's just been a lot of work that's already been done in that Virgo. We've fixed our habits, we have clarity at Mercury Sun. So I see this as like a ending finale of that nodal cycle. Square Uranus, there is still something about our minds that we are allowing ourselves to liberate from. But that Pisces full moon is ruled by Neptune and Aries now, which we had that in the summertime of 2025, but yeah, Neptune retrograde in Aries right there. Then ruled by Mars in Cancer, which is trining the full moon. Mars also making a square to Saturn. So just again, that's a first quarter square. We're pushing emotionally, being very brave to speak for what we personally and individually know is true. Venus, interestingly, in Libra, in an opposition to that Aries stuff. Yeah. So we're more open to considering other people again. Like that's where we are like able to interact with the world and be receptive. Very, very interesting. It's a very interesting moment because like everything is retrograde again now except for Jupiter. Jupiter's still getting its way through Leo. Look at how quickly Jupiter's gone through Leo. This is when the Jupiter-Saturn trine is also getting powerful. Wow. Very interesting because that Jupiter-Saturn trine says there's something very creative that has an opportunity to manifest at this time. And that North Node moon also says there is a visible creative output. Very creative, very deeply creative time. But since all these planets are retrograde, it might not feel so brand new. It's like we've been working for this for quite some time. Yeah. So September 10th, from my perspective, this starts the final quarter of 2026. And that's because I'm ending on December 8th. So I hope that'll make sense as I finish this year out. But I am recording this at the end of December 16th of 2025. And so I find that going from the Sag New Moon of one year to the Sag New Moon of the next year, again, really helps the flow and the mutability and our capacity to like easily flow into these things. And so I'm ending this year, 2026, on December 8th. And then, because that's when the new moon in Sagittarius is. So, or I believe it's Sag, but let's, we'll get into that. Basically, by September 10th, that means that we've stepped into the last quarter. of 2026. And so let's look. This is a Virgo new moon. And if you'll remember, we had 2 Virgo new moons in 2025. It's interesting. This Virgo new moon, not crazy aspects, but that Virgo new moon is about restarting your routine. Okay. And now that the South Node is out of Virgo, we have already kind of done what we needed to do spiritually to realign ourselves to the proper Pisces perspective. Okay. Doing what we need to do with the Virgo. And so Virgo is going to feel a little bit more relaxed by this Virgo season. Most everything except Jupiter and Mars is retrograde. Venus is not, but Venus is in shadow by this point. Okay? Venus goes retrograde in this last quarter of this year 2026. And so that's important to know. All right. So we've got most of the outer planets retrograde. Pluto has definitely been here many times, 3 degrees and 20 minutes. Pluto is strongly sextile Neptune still. That sextile is just going to be for like at least 10, 20 more years. Okay, so that's a whole nother story. But Pluto's still pretty strong sextile to Uranus. Mercury is the ruler of the new moon at this time, 10th of September. And Mercury also is stepping into forming this grand trine to Uranus and Pluto. So there's still some very powerful mind stuff that we can be doing, some communication, some ideology, some languages, something has an incredible opportunity. And, as the sun moves into Libra later on, that opportunity will just grow. Eventually, Jupiter, in a few years, will get to this point, and I think there'll be an even larger opportunity, but that's, again, a few years away. Right now, at this new moon, Jupiter-Saturn trine is still very much so happening. Very powerful as a creative opportunity that manifests itself. And at this point, Sun in Virgo rules that Jupiter. And so there's a creative opportunity to devote yourself to something that you find deeply meaningful. It's probably somewhat relational with Mercury in Libra. Also making that opposition to Neptune, something about that relationship makes us feel limitless. That relationship can see our personal truth in a powerful way. Yeah. Mars is in Cancer, ruling all of the Aries stuff. So we are still taking action for our emotions, for our families. There's something we are really motivated by our own safety. Yeah. Okay, let's see what this turns into. Full moon at the end of September. Again, this is the last quarter of the year. Full moon in Aries conjunct Neptune. Very interesting. Remember just now how I said that relationship that is likely the thing we are devoting ourselves to is allowing us to see ourselves very clearly, see our own truth, our motivating truth very clearly. That's Neptune. This full moon flips that script kind of, because it says, yeah, the way that we are showing up in a relationship is helping us to see our personal truth very, very clearly. That's an almost exact conjunction of Neptune. Almost an exact, it is, the moon is sextile Pluto. The moon is also sextile Uranus. The moon is also in a very wide trine to Mars. Very, like, a ton of motivation here. A ton of, like, there's a potential to not be able to see yourself clearly at this full moon, but it's also just seeing your own, like, deepest motivating truth. With Mars and Cancer still ruling that, full moon. This is very much so. Mars trine. Interesting. Chiron. Chiron's back in Aries at this point, so that there's this area in which we need to stick up for ourselves, heal ourselves, trust ourselves, know ourselves. And I think this Mars is going to be helping us feel motivated to take action on that. Very interesting. Nodes are still at that 29 degrees. Okay, but look at how much closer Jupiter is to the south node. There's just a lot of creative wisdom that we have stored in our being that we are accessing all throughout this time. Basically, the moment Jupiter steps into Leo and the south node steps into Leo, we are accessing some really important creative wisdom. And then Mars opposing Pluto for the rest of this cycle will be quite a lot. In fact, there's a lot going on here. We have a grand cardinal cross. Kind of. We don't have anything in Capricorn, but we have 29 degrees Aries, 24 degrees Libra, and 29 degrees Cancer. Okay. A lot of motivation to move things forward despite any insecurities. Got to move beyond it. We're so done. Okay. Okay, so that full moon in Aries, which was conjunct Neptune, ends up as a new moon in Libra. That new moon in Libra is nicely aspected. Far enough away, I think, from Saturn, Neptune, but still within a conversation to them. So again, look at this. Venus, ruler of the new moon, is retrograde at this point. Okay? In an exact square to Mars, in a square to Pluto. This is big. This is a very relationally important reconsideration. I'm hesitant to call it a new moment. I mean, anything can be new. That's completely up to you. Thematics of how you are open to your own depth with Venus and Scorpio, probably within a relationship, are very important, and how that openness allows you to act on your own creativity and use that creativity to speak to your soul. Okay? That new moon in its sign-based opposition to Saturn Neptune says, here's a relationship that's going to give you a reflection of the world that you are beginning to build right now. Okay, so this October point, this last quarter of 2026, very key relational time. Jupiter still getting closer to South Node. A lot of wisdom here. This is a sextile. It's a very nice new beginning. Maybe this relationship helps you to access this creative wisdom, which you know is your soul speaking, okay? On a very deep level. This Pluto in Aquarius is square and ruling Venus retrograde. Very interesting. Everything's still retrograde. Uranus now retrograde. Saturn, Neptune, all retrograde. Venus retrograde. A lot of working with what you already have at this point. Okay, not to say you can't get new things. Absolutely not. You can always get new things. But this Chiron and Aries. Okay, and this is also squaring Pluto now. That's a closer square. That says you are healing yourself. We are over this wounded healer thing. I'm so done. Okay, you are healing yourself. Okay. Yeah, I think that the new moon itself has a very strong relationship beginning, but that relationship is going to creatively push you to see an accurate reflection of the world that you're building. And that's a gift. That's an amazing gift. Saturn, Neptune, trine, amazing. Amazing. Your actions, your creative actions are supporting your personal resourcefulness. All right, let's look what this turns into. end of October, we get a full moon in Taurus. Interesting. Close to Chiron in another sign. Opposite Venus in her, back in her home sign of Libra, now still retrograde. Resources, resources, resources. This full moon has everything to do with any teaching, any healing that you need to do to transfer your emotional, your physical, personal health, your existential health, Chiron and Aries, to your material resources. Okay, this is Scorpio season. Look at how close Jupiter and the South Node are at this point. Look at that trine to Chiron. Amazing. That resourcefulness, this creative well right here is, I think, what is going to be allowing this Chiron and Aries to be a time of healing. Okay, it's square Pluto. Square Pluto. So this is saying your resources, your emotional relationship to your resources, physical, tangible reality that you can have access to right now. Right now, immediately. Right, end of October. This is like nearing the end of 2026, last quarter 2026. You need to be very brave with your resources and have some emotional trust that you will have what you need. Okay? Sun in Scorpio, Venus over there also still square. This is going to be a wild Venus retrograde because she's going to be making that square when she's moving pretty slowly, square to Pluto, this last quarter square to Pluto, throwing off the way that you've done relationships in the past, honestly, throwing off the way that you have shared resources in the past. You know, Pluto's direct by this point. Look at that, actually. That's big. That's big because that Pluto direct that's still squaring all these things is saying, hey, I know what direction my soul is moving in now externally. And that's still very trine Uranus, still huge opportunity there. Saturn, Neptune still retro. But look at this, Mars coming in to make a conjunction to Jupiter and the South Node. This is gonna be that end of October. It doesn't matter. I don't care what's going on with this Pluto stuff, Pluto squares. I don't care. This is where all of our focus is going to be. Okay, this South Node, Mars, Jupiter conjunction. This is very creative. This is the time to act for your own freaking joy. Okay, that's it. That is it for October. Okay, so now we are still in the last quarter of 2026, and we have the Scorpio New Moon. I just talked about it. Okay, Scorpio New Moon. Square Mars. Okay. It's very active. We're gonna feel very motivated to start something psychic, start something with a lot of trust. Okay, Mercury retrograde, that's okay. Mercury retrograde in this powerful yod to Saturn, Uranus. Adjustments, the way that we communicate and think about intangible resources shifting. Okay, that Mars also conjunct Jupiter South Node. This has, again, everything, absolutely everything to do with our creative intelligence, our creative wisdom, and how we act on our creative wisdom at this time. It is imperative to act on our creative wisdom throughout this lunar cycle, this last lunar cycle of the year, essentially. Okay? Chiron's back in Aries. It is, been opposed to Venus. We are feeling relationally our own personal healing. And that's very important for us to be doing. That Venus is sextile of this huge conjunction. So really by the end of this year, the whole last quarter of 2026, we must focus on what is being asked of us creatively. What is flowing through us creatively. We must let it go. Okay. Pluto is direct, still making these squares, but direct, knows what it's doing. New moon, square Mars. This is just a time of action by the end of this year, even though all this stuff is, you know, it is retrograde and it is going over areas that it has been. Neptune's been here many times. Pluto's been here many times. We're comfortable. We're a little bit more comfortable with these outer planet stuff going on right now. And so with that comfort, we need to firstly take creative action on what we already know. That is going to be the most important thing. And then, you know, why? Because that's the buildup that we're getting to the North Node Pluto conjunction, which is going to, that when that gets closer, that's when we're going to see like tech really starting to take over, or like have a huge like AI, robots, all of that is going to really going to be everyone's focus next year, 2027, when this conjunction gets closer and closer. We need to establish our creative wisdom and our own humanity and our joy here first. Okay. Anything else right now? Not so much. Yeah, I mean, it's more of the same, but we'll see what full moon this turns into. At the end of November, we get another full moon conjunct Uranus. You know, this is reminding me of the full moon that was conjunct Pluto a few months back. Okay. Wow. Sun in Sag. Squaring Mars. We are taking action to again liberate ourselves. Now we are creatively liberating ourselves. That Mars is now in a new phase. So is the Jupiter. Everything's in a new phase of the South Node now. Okay. We know what our inherent creative wisdom is, and we've acted on it. Jupiter's going to keep going back over that South Node, but Mars is just going to keep going forward. Okay. But this full moon conjunct Uranus and Gemini is about how our big picture can be broken down into a million different data points. Very, very trine Pluto, very powerful. Venus direct in Libra, trining the North Node in Aquarius, amazing. Full moon square Mars, just very active. This is going to be something we want to take action on. Like that full moon itself is going to entice even more creative action. Chiron's back deeper in Aries. We are again standing stronger and stronger in this healing of the self. Mercury's direct, Scorpio. You know, things are still retro. Let's see what that final new moon looks like. So here's this final new moon in Sagittarius that happens on December 8th. And this is where I'm ending, because I think at this point of December of next year of 2026, this will be the good time to start looking into 2027. Again, emphasizing the mutability, how things can change, how we can stay in flow instead of fearing that we are not going to hit our marks or hit our goals. Stay in flow, stay in flow. That's the mutable signs, okay? New moon in Sagittarius, nothing hard, nothing like last year, nothing like 2025's new moon. This is really nice. We're reestablishing our faith in Jupiter in Leo, okay? Amazing. In our creative wisdom that we inherently have, that we have taken action on. This is powerful. This is amazing. I love this. This is also in somewhat of a grand fire trine, somewhat, okay? Look at all the Aries, look at all the Sag activation, look at all the Leo activation, look at all the Aries activation. This is the time where we have enough firepower to move in a way that we haven't before. Mars now in Virgo is saying it's time to act strategically in an organized way, because I know what my creative wisdom inherent is, and so now I'm going to act on it. Okay? This new moon is also trying this house node. That's just amazing. Saturn, Neptune still retrograde. Uranus still retrograde. Mercury opposite Uranus at this point, which is very interesting. There's a lot of mental activity, a lot of mental wisdom. Mercury, again, this fire trine, I really like it. It's really, really nice right at the beginning of December to end out the year, step into 2027, I think, with such a good clarity about our creative wisdom, that as the North Node gets closer to Pluto in 2027, we are balancing out how much is changing in our minds, in the algorithms, in the groups that we live in, and we are finding a very solid base of wisdom in our creativity, in our joy, in having fun as a human. This is supported by Saturn, our own personal commitment to ourselves, and at this new moon supporting that to really start that out again for the entire year that follows. That's really what I see. I will look at the full moon at that time to end. And again, we have a full moon in Cancer right at the end of December, which is, interestingly enough, squaring Saturn and Neptune, but they are now direct. So again, this Saturn-Neptune is the cardinal axis. So is the Saturn-Neptune full moon here cardinal axis, because this is Capricorn, Cancer, Aries, right? And this is just like, this is where, again, we see ourselves, there's an emotional resolution to like a business decision that we've made mid to late December that really is setting us up for the next year, but it means we're taking action on this new world that we've been planning. And now that these are both direct, Saturn and Neptune, we're building out that world in the external again, as they were retrograde for a good chunk of this year. Jupiter also retrograde now, trining Chiron, again, healing this self, okay? Wow, grand trine. Mercury, Jupiter, Chiron, grand trine, amazing. Again, I just see this December 2026 as really having that horsepower, that firepower to keep moving. Not necessarily, I mean, this cardinal axis does want us to begin, but I think we will have been in motion, in progress throughout Sagittarius season that gives the right oomph for that beginning to really take hold. It's not coming out of nowhere, okay? So that is what I have for this year. Now, let me then speak a little bit basically to what I see. We have 12 months, December to December. And every quarter has its own thing happening, right? The first quarter of 2026 has the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, as well as Venus-Mars conjunction happening in Capricorn. Completely resetting a lot in that first quarter, okay? Second quarter. So actually, let's go back to the first quarter pretty quick, because first quarter we have the January Venus-Mars conjunction in Cap. February, we have eclipse season start And then we have the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And then Mercury goes retrograde. Okay? At the end of that first quarter in March, we have another eclipse. Okay? That second quarter is a little bit probably the chillest that we get, right? Because it isn't till the end of the second quarter in June that the nodes switch sign, Jupiter switches signs. Okay? So second quarter, relatively chill till the end. Third quarter, we are going to have a Mercury retrograde. August, I didn't mention, but August, oh yeah, I did. We have eclipses again in August. By September, Venus enters shadow. Even end of August, Venus enters shadow, is retrograde until third quarter, where we also have another Venus or Mercury retrograde. And all in that scope of time between the second quarter and the third quarter and the fourth quarter, so the second half of the year, Jupiter South Node conjunction later on with Mars coming through. Huge. So the first half of the year is like, it's not even starting a fire yet, but it's like you buy a lighter. You buy a lighter. And then the second half of the year is when you light the fire. Okay? That's what I have. Bye.